How you going, everyone? My name is Chris, and this is the first sort of video I've done like this, sort of showing myself. Don't normally like to do it as I feel a little bit awkward, but you got to start somewhere and we're going to stick with it. So in this video I'm going to be showing you how you can sort of start a picture without really knowing what you want to paint. Give you a few ideas for that, and basically the goal of it is, at the end of the video, is just to paint something, a really beautiful, nice picture. Not for anything in particular, just something really nice. And I do apologise if this video is a little bit like Sheldon Cooper Fun with Flags, but yeah, we'll get there. Alright, so let's go over here. This is my little setup. I like to keep everything pretty neat. So I'll just go ahead and turn on the lights. Alright, so let's get down to what we're actually going to be painting. So what I like to do is, if I don't really know what I want to paint, I just write down some simple things like create a magical world. That sort of gets me thinking, you know, do I want to paint a landscape? Do I want to paint an interesting building? Maybe a boat? And then if I feel like, oh, I want to paint a lighthouse, well, maybe I can start looking into different pictures of lighthouses. In this case, I kind of wanted to paint sort of a snowscape. I love painting any sort of snow environment, so do something that I like doing. I'm going to go with that. The other thing I was thinking is paint a mysterious creature. And then I thought, well, maybe you can paint one that you've never painted before. That's a good place to start because it's something you haven't done before, it's interesting, and also allows you to, maybe you can go online, discover some animals and creatures that you've never seen before, ones that you haven't really heard much about or know much information on, and you know, learn about them and get some ideas from that. And maybe you can start thinking about how these two things, your environment and that creature, are going to fit together. In this case, I've gone with the narwhal. Like I was talking about before, how does this creature, this narwhal, fit into that snowscape? Straight away I'm thinking like a river that's coming from the ocean, going deep into like a really snow-covered forest, and I'm thinking of a character on the bank of that river sort of saluting, maybe greeting those narwhals as they pop out the broken ice. That's just where my mind's going with that, so that's probably the idea I'm going to go with. Just by writing down some simple things like this, you can start to think, well, these are actually pretty interesting things, and maybe if I join them together in a certain way, it's going to become quite an interesting picture. Now that we've decided what we're going to do, let's just paint it, and I'll show you a few tips along the way.
Okay, as you can see here, I'm applying some masking fluid, and I'm using the Winsor & Newton colourless masking fluid. I find it's the best one. I've tried many before. This one, being colourless, it doesn't stain, and even if you leave it on for a week and remove it later, it's not bad at all. It doesn't tear up the paper or anything like that. If you use it on a really large area, then it probably will, but for smaller areas like I've done here, you're not going to have any issues whatsoever. And that tool I use to apply the masking fluid, that's called a ball stylus. It's a sculpting tool. It comes in all different sizes, different size balls on the end. Being metal, it's perfect for masking fluid because masking fluid dries really quick, so it's going to get stuck in your brush fibres and sometimes ruin your brush. But with the metal ball, you can easily just wipe it off with a tissue or paper towel. Definitely something you want to pick up. They're very cheap, get them anywhere really. Local art stores, craft stores, Amazon, whatever's easy for you. So I'm just putting in all of the base colours, and then as you can see here, coming in with a bit more depth, trying to build some of those shadow areas up a bit more. I didn't always work this way, like I would sometimes get fixed on working on one particular area, but the more you get into painting, you realise it's a lot smarter to block in everything at the same stage, at the same rate, I mean, and that way it looks a lot more even and consistent later. It's not as exciting doing it that way though, but you know, trust the process and go through, do the whole page at the same rate, and you're just going to get that better result in the end. Even though you might want to just jump straight into painting the narwhals or the character or something like that because they are a little bit more exciting, but you know, tend to leave those later till the background's all blocked in. So yeah, coming in with more colour here, richer colour in the shadows, trying to define those areas a bit more, get a bit of an idea of where I want that main light source to be coming from and what I'm going to drop back out of that light. So I'm just defining the shapes of those trees with the snow. Watercolor can be a little bit challenging in terms of thinking about where your light source is going to be and that, because you really have to know or had made a decision on that before you start doing your layers, because unlike other mediums, you're working from light to dark. So if you want something to be light, you would have had to plan for that, because you want to make sure that you're not putting paint on that area or you're keeping that area lighter. It's just something to keep in mind. You always have to be thinking about it. So you just saw me paint over basically the entire background there with a pinkish, well, it's more of an orange, I guess, wash. And don't be afraid to do that with watercolor, especially in the earlier stages, because what that also does is it evens everything out, gives you a more consistent finish, because it will take some of the pigments that are already on the paper and spread them around. So if you have any rough sort of edges and that sort of thing, that wash will help to blend everything together, make it look more consistent, more even. And it's a great way to build a mood that you want. I've used it because I want the whole environment to have sort of a sunset feel to it, quite pink. Obviously I've taken that a lot further than it would be in real life, but that's the whole point of illustration. So yeah, and then here I'm just coming back in over the top and reapplying some of those shadows, because every time you put a wash on, you are dropping back what you've already got there. It's going to pull it back, it's going to look more faded, it's not going to look as high contrast, so keep that in mind. But it's definitely a technique I use a lot. You'll see me quite often just put a wash straight over everything I've done. You'll probably actually hear people call what I'm calling a wash a glaze. Don't get caught up on the terminology too much, but I mean, I always call it a wash because typically washes will absorb into a surface, whereas a glaze will sit on top of it. This being watercolor and a porous paper, I like to think that a wash is better terminology for it. So you can see here I'm going back over those areas again and again with darker colours. I'm trying to build up that depth and that shadow. The paper can take a lot with watercolours. You can build on top of pigments many times, 10, 20 times. But keep in mind that the quality of paper will determine how many layers you can put on top of that. This particular paper is hot press. Cold press, which is the more textured one, you can definitely get more layers on top from my experience. But Hot press isn't too far behind. It's only a matter of a few layers, I think. And as I was saying before, the quality of your paper does play a big role in how the pigments sit on top of each other. If you've got a bad quality paper, one that maybe isn't cotton fibre, then don't expect too much from it. With watercolours, you really do want to spend the money on the paper. Even the paints, you can get away with some cheaper paints if you're on a real tight budget, but spend the money on the paper. That will give you the best results. Now you can see the reason for those dots on the tree and on the sword. I wanted those to glow, so I'm keeping that paper white, and then around that area you can pull back some of that pigment that you've laid. You can just use any brush for that and just pull it back with a tissue or paper towel, and lay down some colour. In this case I've gone multicoloured with the fairy lights, and that sword has a slight blue glow to it. Alright, I'm just starting to block in the main colours on the characters. I'm not going to show you every single detail that I do. After these steps, there's quite a few details that I come back in and do, which really elevate the work from this level, I feel, to the next level. But it's fiddly and time consuming. You don't need to watch all of that. Don't forget to like and subscribe, as it goes a long way to getting the video out there to other people who might find it interesting. Thanks to anyone who stuck around to the end. I hope you found this video interesting and also helpful. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.